Morena koutou katoa. Tēnā koutou, kia huhia mai nei o tēnei wā. Tēnā koutou mō kaupapa, mō strategy and policy hui. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. We'll just start with karakia. Whakatakatahau ki te uru, whakatakahau ki te katonga, kia mā kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki tai. E hi hiki ane te atakura, he teo, he hoka, he hauhu, tihei, Māori ora. Good morning everybody and welcome to the Strategy and Policy meeting for today. The Council and Standing Committee meetings are live streamed on the Council's website and the YouTube channel. Public gallery attendees' presence implies your consent to being broadcast. Can everyone in the room please ensure your phones are set to silent? Further information about live streaming protocols can be found on the Council's website. Health and safety. In case of emergency, please follow the building wardens to the nearest exit. The meeting point is across the road at Peace Park, and bathroom facilities are located opposite the chamber foyer entrance. We have one apology today from Councillor O'Brien, and we've got Councillor Boynton attending online, Morena Tony. Can I please have a mover for the apologies? Thank you, Councillor Dukes, seconded by Councillor Dennis. All those in favour? Aye. Against carried. Thank you. Any acknowledgements or tributes today? No, thank you. Any conflicts of interest on items on the agenda or appendices? Thank you. And today we have no public participation. We'll now move to item 7, which is confirmation of the minutes on page 11. And I would say any corrections required for either the Strategy and Policy Committee held on Thursday the 28th of May or the bylaws hearing on Tuesday the 9th of June? No, if not, can I please have a mover to accept those? Thank you, Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Reo Morgan. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. If you just excuse me for a moment, my screen seems to have gone off, so I'll just bring that back up. Thank you. Right, and now we move to the Community Board minutes, and I'm asking for a mover and a second for the following minutes: Taneata Community Board 11th of May, Murupara Community Board 18th of May, Whakatane Ohopi Community Board 25th of May, and two unconfirmed minutes from the Rangataiki Community Board the 10th of June, and the Taneata Community Board 29th of June 2026, taking all those together. Can I have any discussion on any of those? Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Dean, second by Councillor Hamill. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, now we move to page 13 of the agenda, item 9.1, and this is the Bay of Plenty Regional Spatial Plan. And welcome to Nicholas and Dan for taking us through this report.
Good morning, everyone, and yeah, thank you. So this paper is part of a broader process with the resource management reforms and the replacement of the RMA with a Future Planning Act and the Future Natural Environment Act, and things are moving at pace, so that while we're writing the paper, the Select Committee report came out, which was early last week, and that has made a number of recommendations to the bills. That does kind of affect some of this, what we're looking at, and we're still trying to get a head around, what that means. But essentially, and I'll talk to it as we go through the implications. I don't think it's huge in terms of this paper. It's more just things that we need to be aware of. Bearing in mind we are still in the pre-enactment phase. They are bills, they're not legislation. So really, this is work we're doing with the other councils within the Bay of Plenty region in anticipation of what's coming, given the very short time frames that we are expecting to face to implement these acts, There is a slight increase in time that the Select Committee have recommended for spatial plans, but it's only another 6 months before it's notified. So instead of notifying the regional plan by December next year, it would be by June the following year. So it gives us a bit of time, but it's still effectively, 21 months from enactment, which is a very short time for a statutory document of this nature. And I'll remind you, we spent the best part of 3 or 4 years on the Eastern Bay Spatial Plan, so there's a lot in these documents. So having said that, I'll get into the report itself. And I guess I hope that my preamble gave a bit of an explanation to why some of the recommendations are slightly long-winded. It's simply because we need to recognise that things may change between now and the legislation being enacted. There could be further changes. One that did come out after the Select Committee report, a couple of hours after the Select Committee report, was the Minister saying, mana whakahono arohi, we're not going to be transitioned over. That isn't in the Select Committee report. That was a decision of caucus. So there might be other stuff that come out before they become legislation. So whilst we are working through the pre-enactment phase, we just need to be a bit agile and being able to adjust how we do things to ensure that we are meeting whatever the legislation that we end up with. So, having said that, the key phase of the process we're in now is really looking at setting ourselves up to do the spatial plan. It's the work you do before the spatial plan so that you can do the spatial plan. And so we were following the Bill's guidance around process agreements. There is a bit of content that needs to be worked out in the process agreements, including things like the geographical areas, the priority areas, and there's a few other bits and pieces. In the Select Committee report, those have been stripped away. It is really about process. That's not to say we can't do those things, but it's very much focused on how do we and the other councils work together to implement the Spatial Planning Committee and get ourselves ready to start the work on the spatial plan. So, yeah, a few changes, but I don't think they're things that we would necessarily not do anyway, because it's good work we've been doing, and it has, a no regrets approach has underpinned the work that we are doing on this the whole way through. So I don't think there's anything lost there. If anything, it just means that we are well placed to really kick into the spatial plan proper once we have the bills. So, having said that, there are a few recommendations here around the approach we're taking, including the process agreement that we're working on. This isn't endorsing a process agreement, but it's really around, this is what we're thinking in terms of how we would develop a process agreement, noting that they need to be in place by the end of the year. So we've got a bit of time, but it's putting the building blocks together. And so what we're really seeking today is some endorsement as to whether or not we're on the right track. Is this something that we're comfortable with as a council in terms of how we are progressing things? So, there are the process agreement itself and the opportunities and issues that we've identified, largely drawn out of the existing Eastern Bay Spatial Plan. We've tried to retain that as much as possible. And in fact, that is an approach that all the councils are doing, is building off our existing spatial plans, building off our existing regional policy statement, existing regional, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here, we're just using what we've got and trying to work with that. So we do have some issues and opportunities we've identified. There's a bit of a draft, started for 10. I won't go through the full list, but it is there in the report and in the attachment A to the report for the Eastern Bay and for the wider region, and also for the cross-regional issues. We've also outlined a couple of different options for the Spatial Plan Committee. There's what's called a minimum statutory option, which is essentially we'll just do the minimum what the legislation says. There have been some slight changes recommended in the Select Committee report. So instead of just having a minimum of at least one person from each council and potentially a central government rep, there is a bit of a stronger recognition of the need to incorporate iwi or Māori a worldview on that. What that looks like is a bit flexible, but the Select Committee report does say it's, they're not precluding participation or iwi authorities being part of that process. And I'll just add that there is a part of the work streams that we're working through is with the Māori Policy advisors from all the councils as to how we work with iwi on this, recognising that there's a lot of iwi, there's a lot of hapu in the Bay of Plenty, somewhere like 38 iwi I think, and 200 and something hapu, 230 hapu, so it's a really, it's a complex environment with lots of different views on things as well. So we are starting to reach out to iwi as well and have discussions as to how they would like to participate in the process. So I'll keep going. I am rambling a little. I wonder if I just simply take questions. There's quite a bit in here, but we did have the briefing last week. The report's attached. There's a bit of content without going through every detail unless you want to. Yes.
Dan, have you got something you'd like
yes,
to follow up?
Thank you, through the Chair, and thank Nicholas. I think while this is quite a significant change in the process and how things are done, I just thought I'd draw your attention to, it's page 16, where there is a brief program, and in that, at the bottom of the page, and while the system's changing, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in that, and we've recognised that as a team, looking at zoning and how we get the most for the district. If you look at the right-hand side of that program, yes, there's going to be this, the committee that's working on this, yes, there's this process agreement, but effectively once everything's developed, it comes back to council for a decision. Yeah. So a lot of it does seem to feel like it's difficult to control and keep up with because the councils are working so fast and developing a lot of work on this. It still comes back for the decision with the elected members, and I think that's something to be aware of.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Nicholas. We'll open up for any questions, and just for those people who might be viewing at a later date or online, we did have quite an in-depth briefing last week, so a lot of the councillors' wiggle type questions have already been answered by the gentleman. Do we have any other questions of clarification from this morning, please? Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Nicholas. And Dan, just going forward, if this whole rejig of local government happens and our Bay of Plenty region gets subdivided in, say, 3, will this still be effective? Will this... I can see one way it would be a waste of time, but in another way, will there still be that relationship built through this? I mean, is that bigger document that the relationship will survive everything else?
Yeah, well, so if there are changes in the structure of local government, we still need to develop a spatial plan at the current regional level. So we still need to develop one for the Bay of Plenty region. We also, and this is the first generation plan, right? In the same way that we had several district plans under the RMA. When we came to redo it or review it, then if there's a new structure, because this would be also notified before any changes to local government, then there would be a new process agreement, but that would be built with the new entities, whatever they look like. But for the current purposes, it's easily able to adjust, but we still need to forge on and do it with the current councils as they exist.
So you don't think this is wasted by the fact in 2 or 3 years' time we can change around? So
No.
is it actually better that we've done this now before any rejig happens? So you've your basis and your cross-region.
Yes, yeah, it does. And because it's also affecting things like, the planning rules and zones and what people can build where. And so the longer it goes on without the change is the lack of certainty. So it's about trying to get that certainty in place under the new framework as quickly as we can in accordance with the legislation. The Select Committee also put something interesting in there, which I was reading the other day, around possibly having, because you have the spatial plan and then each council does its own land use plan. So we'd have a Whakatane land use plan to replace the district plan. The Select Committee have actually recommended, as an option, councils could have joint land use plans. So we could leap straight into an Eastern Bay land use plan. I haven't discussed this with anyone other than yourselves, but so hopefully it doesn't go too public. But those sorts of things may be things that we could explore. Actually anticipating some of those changes.
And just to add to that, and I know it's got a new name, but effectively it would replace the regional policy statement, the RPS, which is at that bay-wide level. As Nicholas has mentioned, you have those land use plans that will be specific to the local areas or potentially the Eastern Bay.
Thank you, that was interesting.
Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Hamill.
Thank you. So where would this fit in the hierarchy of planning instruments? I might have missed it in the presentation, but if it's replacing regional plans, does this sit above, so it goes above land use plans?
Yeah.
And then what sits above that?
So all the existing plans will be gone, right? So the sweeps away the existing hierarchy. What we'll end up with is the new Acts, Planning Act and Natural Environment Act. Under that will be quite strong national policy direction. Then beneath that will sit the regional spatial plan, which will replace the RPS, replace the regional plans, replace everything. And then under the regional spatial plan will sit land use plans for each territorial authority, and also a region-wide natural environment plan, which will replace the current natural resources plan of the regional council. So, but each of those plans has to implement the higher order plan. So it's actually very directive, top-down, instead of this bottom-up approach that we've kind of been working with since 1991.
Yeah, it's quite a change.
Very structured, very top-down. And by the time you get to the land use plan, there's actually not a whole lot of wiggle room. We're effectively implementing what's in the regional spatial plan.
And as part of that hierarchy, there's been very clear, the first one to come off was the environmental standards NES for Papakainga, which sets some very clear rules that have to be adopted and make certain activities permitted. So along with the new NPSs, there's going to be this, 20-odd really strong environmental standards like the NES for Papakainga, and those will have to filter through. And so they effectively replace some of the rules we have already in the district plan, and we'll see a lot of those, and we're expecting a lot of those over the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any other questions? I have a few questions, thank you. And I just wanted to, I think we asked this question the other day, and just confirming that this is not a cost to the different councils, it's all funded by regional council, is that correct?
So regional council are funding a program manager to coordinate the pre-enactment phase of this work. As part of that work, we're looking at what the future costs could be to councils. It's a bit tricky to know how much a regional spatial plan is going to cost and a land use plan under this new framework, because we haven't done it before. We did have budget in the LTP for the district plan review, and this replaces the need for the district plan review. But our working assumption is that we're expecting the cost not to be greater than the district plan review, potentially less, but we need to understand a bit more around the national policy direction and see the acts enacted to help inform that. It's tricky. We're working with uncertainty, but that's a pretty common thing these days, I think, for councils. So
it's still costing.
So at the moment,
council
it's just staff
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the review, one of the bits of work that we did right up front was the review of the Stats NZ population, expected population growth, and I think we split that up based on population size between the councils, was it? So we paid quite a relatively small amount compared to, say, Western Bay, but those conversations are being had as the need for those pieces of work come up, but we would that's helped us inform our long-term plan assumptions as well, so it's not just a cost based on this work, it's helping inform other pieces of work that we're doing in council.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is about Māori representation, and we have Poriki Kawarau and ourselves have Māori ward councillors, we have good relationships with our iwi and hapu. Is the same, are you aware of Western Bay, Tauranga, Rotorua having similar good relationships that we can go quickly to Māori to get their views and input?
I believe so, and they've also got quite well-established structures in place to do that. So things like smart growth have representation on those. There's also a number of co-governance type arrangements that Western Bay, Tauranga have, for example, with some of the major rivers. And so I think that has been established, and they're using smart growth and the smart growth structures, including representation feedback, is to leverage and get information into what we've done so far, and I think the intention is to carry on doing that. As you'll be aware, the regional deal MOU was signed recently, and so I think there's requirements there as well, but again, they've just deferred to smart growth, which has that representation. There's also a separate stream of work where it's being led by regional, but they're engaging directly with the different iwi groups, alongside the technical work that we've started on this.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, and thanks, Dan. There are the number of natural resources settlements, like Dan alluded to, co-governance, including within our district, Rangitaka River Forum, Tarawera Awa Restoration Strategy Group. Under the new Planning Act, Natural Environment Act, there'll be a 2-year sort of transitional, this is what's proposed in the Act, there'll be a 2-year window where essentially the Minister will negotiate with those iwi around how to transition those treaty settlements into the new legislation. So we'll see how that goes. But I think the idea is they get rolled through in some capacity, but what that looks like will be determined in that 2-year window, I anticipate.
All right, thank you.
And just to add to that, I think when you look at the options that will be presented in the mayoral forum, there's statutory minimum plus, which effectively has more representation proposed for their planning committee than what's required. So it's been explored through the project group.
All right, thank you. And my last question was just probably a mechanical question, is are all the other councils at the same stage as ourselves? Like, is there any council that's not going to be able to make the decisions to be able to meet the timelines?
So we're all working in parallel. The idea is that between now and the end of August, there are similar reports to this going up to all the councils in the region and their respective committees. And then there will be a very similar report to this going to the mayoral forum on the 10th of September as well. So, very much we are working in hand in glove in this.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Dennis, you had another question.
Just one more. On page 32, it talks about the requirement to establish a spatial planning committee under governance. How is that representation to be made up? Is that purely another committee for regional council, or is that a committee that will be set up for representation from each local government?
So it will contain at least one representative from each council. It could be a joint committee established under the Local Government Act. But there are options for, I mean, it's sort of the minimum statutory option. There are options for having a wider representation than just simply one person per council. We've got a couple of them alluded to in this, described in the document. Really, there's sort of the minimum, statutory minimum, but then there's an enhanced one where we look to broaden it out a bit more, maybe having more than one rep per council. It could have a couple or more. There's options there to explore.
It talks about governance to set up a committee, but I take it it'll be staff that will be part of that committee, or will it be the mayors?
No, the committee will be appointed as governance from each, well, it could be anyone from each council.
So it'll be
But elected representatives, I would
councillors.
expect, yeah.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
and part of the conversations was, especially in our view, the need for like independent chair and secretariat functions, so that we don't have necessarily one council driving it in a specific direction. So that's covered off, and on page 33, under principles, the paper covers off what's been discussed in terms of representation and making sure that there's that regional, sub-regional, local representation, but also tangata whenua representation. And then further down in the paper, which is the same one that's been shared across the different councils, you'll see that's been broken down into what the options are that can look like.
Good morning to Paul and Emlyn, also online, and Councillor Boynton, you have a question. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor.
Morena aroa mai. Morena everybody. I had a question just on page 36, 9.1.1, and it was just relating to the table. And I'm just asking if you can just clarify, because there's a different colours there, where it has tangata whenua representation. Is that table just highlighting what we don't have to do, or what we have to do? Sorry, could you please just explain that part? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. These aren't things that the legislation is requiring us, or the bills requiring us of us at this stage. What it really is setting out some considerations for how we could provide for tangata whenua representation in the Spatial Planning Committee and decision making around the spatial plan. So it's really just things that need to be thought about, essentially, is what that table is describing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. I was just trying, because it was saying inconsistent, so I was just wondering, are we being inconsistent, or were they being inconsistent? But you've clarified that it's about us still being able to explore that.
it's effectively an assessment against the principles that have been set out versus what's required as a minimum through the proposed Act. The Act does not necessarily require full representation, whereas we're saying as a principle we want to have that representation. And so that's why it's inconsistent, because want to set up the agreement and set up the committee with representation. The Act is saying at least one person with skills and expertise in terms of Māori views, and that's it. And so we're saying we want more than that. So it's inconsistent in that what we want is more than what the Act is suggesting.
Okay, no, that's cool. One person for 38 iwi and 200 hapu. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, any further questions of clarification? If not, I'll just, before we move to getting a mover and a seconder, are people happy if I just summarise those key points 1 through to 5, rather than read every word? Yes. Great. Well, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for 1, that the Strategy and Policy Committee receive the Regional Spatial Plan update. 2, that we endorse the approach in identifying key graphical areas, issues and opportunities. 3, that we confirm the Spatial Plan Committee evaluation principles. 4, that we confirm the identified Spatial Planning Committee options and recommended directions. And 5, that we acknowledge the development of the first regional spatial plan for the Bay of Plenty will be a collaborative exercise that recognises the roles and responsibilities of all councils. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor James, and a seconder, Councillor Isles. Any debate? If none, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tony. And now we will move to item 9.2 on page 44 of the agenda. Thank you. And once again we have Nicholas, Dan and Stephen. Welcome, Stephen, to the table. Talking about the Awakeri Structure Plan project update.
Through the Chair, kia ora koutou katoa. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide the committee with an update on the progress of the Awakeri Structure Plan since the last report in May, and to outline the engagement options available as we move forward towards a wider community involvement. Unlike my previous presentation, which was focused on strategic background and reasons for undertaking the project, today's update and report before you is very much about what has been achieved over the last 3 months, where the project has now reached, and the options and a recommended pathway available to Council for broader community engagement. Since the committee last received an update in May, the project has continued to advance across several parallel work streams. Project delivery team has continued to refine technical inputs relating to flood modelling and stormwater management, ecology, transport, urban design, and infrastructure planning discussions have now also commenced. From a project management perspective, one of the strengths of the process has been an integrated way in which the work has been undertaken. One of the common shortcomings of structure planning can be that technical investigations occur in isolation, with integration coming by way of a planner and a planning report at the end of the process, stitching various comments together from the various subject matter experts. The Awakeri Structure Plan project has taken a more deliberate, collaborative and inclusive approach. As planners, we often talk about integrating planning outcomes. So the value of the Awakeri process is that natural strengths, technical constraints, community values, and urban design opportunities are being developed together in the same room by the project development team, rather than in isolation. This has allowed the project team to test growth scenarios, refine the emerging spatial framework in an iterative manner. The stormwater, geotechnical, ecological, and movement disciplines have been brought together early so that opportunities, constraints can be considered collectively as the structure evolves. The other major work stream that's been underway since May has been the community involvement. The community reference group process is now largely concluded. 3 workshops were undertaken between April and June involving local residents, landowners and community representatives. The purpose of the community reference group was not to achieve a consensus or even a community approval, rather to assist the project team in understanding the values, the aspirations and the concerns that exist within the community towards future development of the area. Valuable insights were gained on community lived values, local knowledge, perceived opportunities and concerns, place-based identity and understanding the cognitive values of place and time. This feedback has been invaluable in the emerging structure plan. The report deliberately refers to the structure plan as emerging because at this stage it is still a draft planning framework. The plan represents the point where technical advice, urban design, infrastructure considerations, environmental and community input are beginning to come together into coherent spatial plan. The question of why Awakeri has now been answered through the spatial plan and local growth strategy work. The next step in this process was, can Awakeri accommodate urban growth at a scale required to provide a meaningful contribution to the district's growth forecasting and development capacity needs? The short answer to that question is yes, and the rest will be delivered to members when the structure plan can be fully presented. Several themes have emerged from an urban design perspective through the work completed to date. These have included a nature positive growth model. The design places significant emphasis on ecology, enhancement and environmental outcomes rather than treating them as residual matters. The Mangaroa stream has become a central organising feature in the emerging structure plan rather than planning around it and worrying about stop banks and keeping water away. The emerging concept celebrates and restores this key landscape feature and makes it central to the future morphology of the future Awakeri village. Incorporation of blue-green infrastructure and nature-based solutions through stormwater management, ecological restoration and open space planning are deliberately being integrated through said nature-based solutions wherever possible. The emerging framework seeks to improve local movement network and safe pedestrian environment, strengthening walkable connections between future neighbourhoods, the village centre and existing community facilities, and promoting a shared and alternative modal option. One of the strong messages that came out of the community involvement has been the importance of retaining Awakeri's distinct rural character. The emerging concept therefore seeks to avoid an abrupt, hard urban edge and instead seeks to an appropriate, softer transition between future development and surrounding productive landscape. Alongside the early community reference group participation, the project team has also established discussions with mana whenua and key stakeholders. Discussions have occurred with nominated hapu representatives. Ngāti Awa was contacted and asked how they wanted to be involved in the project, and they have nominated 3 hapu that were relevant to the Awakeri site, and we have open discussions and these are ongoing with those hapu groups. This engagement remains ongoing and will continue to position the emerging structure plan as a more robust draft for the next phase of work, which is the community engagement. So transitioning into a period of refinement and heading towards the community engagement phase, the report outlines 4 or 5 possible engagement pathways. And to be sure, through the Chair, the report refers to the community engagement of the draft structure plan and not subsequent plan change process. I will briefly review each of those options. Option 1 is the special consultative procedure. This represents the most formal option. It would provide the highest level of public participation. However, it would also introduce additional time, cost, and procedural complexity for what remains a non-statutory planning document with few implications to Council in terms of rezoning land and infrastructure commitments. It is the project team's view that this option is difficult to justify given the non-statutory nature of the emerging document, but we do position that opinion with Council to decide. Excuse me. Option 2 is the targeted public engagement, and this is the recommended option. It builds upon the community reference group process, mana whenua engagement to date, agency discussions, and the technical investigations already underway. It provides meaningful opportunities for wider community participation while remaining proportionate to the significance of the decision in the document. Importantly, it allows the community to have their say and influence the final structure plan outcome before it returns to Council for adoption consideration. From both a planning and project management perspective, this option provides a balanced approach between participation, time, cost efficiency and project momentum. Option 3 is integration into the long-term plan. Council could defer engagement and rely on the future long-term plan consultation process. While this reduces engagement duplication, there is a risk that important land use and placemaking discussions could become overshadowed by funding and infrastructure content and overtones. The structure plan addresses a much broader range of matters than the infrastructure investment alone. Option 4 is the deferral of the engagement until the future regional spatial planning process gets underway. The final option is essentially to wait for the future resource management reforms and regional spatial planning process. The difficulty with this option is the uncertainty around timing and process. Timeframes remain unclear and potentially several years away from implementation. From a strategic planning perspective, this risks losing momentum, delaying guidance and implementation, and could help future investment and growth. Future investment and growth decisions that could begin positioning themselves for the immediate future. Therefore, the recommended approach is the targeted engagement. Subject to Council's endorsement, officers intend to work closely with Council's communications and engagement team to deliver a program that includes exhibition of the draft structure plan and commentary, targeted communications through local networks and media channels, a Reo Māori online survey, drop-in sessions in Awakeri for the wider community to provide opportunities for residents and locals and the wider community to discuss the plan directly with the project team. This approach is considered proportionate, practical, and consistent with Council's significance and engagement policy. Most importantly, it ensures that the wider community has the opportunity to influence the outcome of the structure plan before it is returned to Council. So through the Chair, and in closing, since May, the project has progressed significantly through technical investigations, which have now matured. Community reference group engagement has been completed. Agency and mana whenua discussions are continuing. The project is therefore moving an emerging concept level structure plan has now developed and tested through an integrated design process. The project is therefore moving from investigation and concept development into refinement and the wider community engagement phase. The project team consider that a target engagement approach represents the most appropriate next step and the balance between meaningful community participation, proportionality and project delivery. Thank you, and through the Chair, I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank
Apologies
you,
for
Stephen.
my croaky voice.
Not a problem. Have a pause and a drink of water. Again, just for the recording and for those that are in the room, the councillors have just received a really in-depth briefing on the Awakeri structure plan, with numerous councils attending some of those engagements as well. At our recent briefing, there were lots of questions from councillors. So I just encourage councillors that if you did have any questions of clarification that you asked then, feel free, please, to ask them now as well. So, Councillor Jukes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I am on page 50. Just in regards to the financial budgets, it has a cost spread over 2 years of the 465.90. Could you just give a little bit more breakdown on that for us, please? It's on 7.3.
I apologise. Could you just repeat the question again?
Sure. So just in regards to that budget of the 465.90, and you're saying that it might need to be increased, it's over the 2 financial years, but just a little bit more breakdown of the costs. And if you don't have it to hand, I'm happy to receive an email later on that breakdown to all of us.
Could certainly provide a breakdown later for you to be more accurate. The figure included in the report is the cumulative figure of the costs of external consultants and a number of the consultations that have been undertaken with, I guess, a margin for additional works, and I think one or two other, there's an economics assessment that was also included that wasn't originally budgeted for, but we could provide a little bit more around that for you.
Just through the chair on the same issue.
Through yourself.
So do we have budget in the current long-term plan for this to continue? Because I'm just concerned that...
Yeah, we do.
We do?
Yeah.
And what are the expected future costs? Because you do indicate there that it's going to increase. Is it going to increase exceeding what we already have allocated?
No, not even close. No, it'd be well under the budget. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
That was my second question.
Tag. Councillor Dennis, thanks.
We always like hearing about things coming under budget, so it's really good. Hey, in your whole thing here, it talks about that we've already had 3 meetings with the community reference group. Now we're going to go out and do community engagement, and some of those might include 2-3 meetings at the Awakeri Event Centre. Isn't that just doubling up? And do you risk over consultation with the community?
So the initial consultation or the initial community reference group wasn't about so much a consultation over a draft structure plan. It was about understanding what was important to the community so we could design the structure plan. It was about positioning the structure plan in a way that had already heard from the community in terms of what they valued, what was important to them, how we could help design.
So part of the results of that is you've worked out the incredible importance that the water flow has in that area because of ponding and flooding, all that sort of stuff, and the pathways and the access to the school and all that sort of stuff. So I understand that. So the next one will be about what type of shops, what type of buildings, the size of the sections.
Yeah. So I guess the next one will be about the structure plan and what's been designed, but it won't just necessarily be focused to the immediate community. It will be located within Awakeri, but it'll be targeted to a much wider community this time.
I'm struggling a bit what you mean by structure plan, I guess, is... Could you
Okay,
just...
so before we started the process...
Excuse me, Stephen, can you bring your microphone closer to you, please? Thank you.
Before we started the process, we had a number of project goals. The structure plan has now developed through its technical testing, and we've been able to integrate these project goals with community sentiment, community feedback. So it's achieving not only natural and physical guidance, but also community values and lived experiences and values. So it's about positioning the structure plan into a form that achieves what we need to from a development perspective, from a nature and constraints perspective, but also from the development hitting the notes with the community and what they were interested in achieving
So
as well.
we did a lot of that in the reference meeting, and we put where the shops and all that, and the bridges and all that sort of stuff are going. So you're saying now you're actually going to refine that a bit more to actually build on.
Yep, just to follow up on that through the chair, yes, it's effectively the reference group was quite a targeted group of people that gave input into the design and the concepts and the principles, where this now is just going to open it up to the rest of the community to come and effectively submit on what's been prepared, and then we can take that forward and bring it back for a decision in terms of getting adoption, having known that we haven't just restricted it to the 33 people that were part of the reference group. So it's effectively the broader consultation.
So sorry for this. So what you're saying is, and tell me if I'm correct or not, the reference group created the plan
Yes.
for everyone else to submit and talk about.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, because as in terms of our function as council, we could have gone away and just put a plan down on the table and said, this is what we think's best for you, and then we would have had to fight against the perceptions of that, and so this is effectively community-led planning, and then we've heard a lot of the concerns. It was really interesting hearing about the history of those canals and the concerns that the farmers had and where it floods and how it misaligned with the modelling, and now that's been integrated back into the modelling. And so we basically acid tested a lot of the assumptions with the reference group. So, yeah.
So just to add a further bit to that, there was comment from the community, if we go all the way back to the start, that this community reference group was only hitting a certain few. And that perhaps this is a conversation that needed to be done on a much wider field. That initial discussion was never about community engagement, it was about targeted design feedback. So this is now a wider engagement that we're considering.
Thanks, Councillor. I've now got Councillor Whittaker, followed by Councillor Hamill.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the diagram plan on page 58, and where you've got the ponds drawn in along the Te Rahu Canal, are they interconnected or are they individual? I mean, do they feed into each other and then feed into the canal? I mean, I don't want to get into too much detail, but whether you've got that or whether this is just a concept plan, but...
This is just a concept plan, but what it represents is that areas along the southern boundary of the Te Rahu Canal stop bank are areas that do meet or could meet the definition of natural inland wetlands. So what we've established is an opportunity here to enhance those features and be a part of the wider operation of the stormwater management network.
Right, yeah. I mean, because when I think of things like Papamoa, the Papamoa settlement, where you've got that drain that goes right along, and then it does feed off that into the ocean, which is a great sort of walking, cycling, da-da-da. So it's a similar concept, is it?
Yes.
Yes, and I think that, as Stephen's mentioned, that it's happened in an integrated approach, that while this is concept, there's still been a lot of technical work that's been done in the background around how to manage stormwater and how to manage the flow that will be created with the hard surfaces. And so we've modelled and tried to anticipate what would be required to allow development of the areas. We've also looked at the typology of the housing and that rural character that wants to be retained. We've looked at putting bigger lots closer to those areas so that you still have that interface that feels quite rural, and then put a lot more of the density closer towards the middle. And while we tried not to talk about Papamoa, it came up quite a lot. But also one of the things we were trying to achieve is we didn't want to open up areas and rezone and then developers have to deal with stormwater on a site-by-site basis, because then you'd buy a piece of land as a developer and have to offset half of it for stormwater. Whereas the way that this has come together is anticipating all of that happening and then going, okay, rather than making them do it on a site-by-site basis, we'll put these areas and earmark these areas to deal with stormwater and look at it from a catchment point of view. So how's it going to impact the downstream? What can we do to make it development ready effectively?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Council. Councillor Hamill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Stephen, Dan and Nick for the report. I've been following this with interest, this project, and I just want to, I think it's a great report, and I think that the way we've stepped through the whole process has been really thoughtful and quite considered, and I really like how the reference group's been utilised right at the start. Thank you for the briefing last week, because that's answered a lot of my questions. I just wanted to, I think you've got a really comprehensive sort of next step with engagement, but there'll be plenty of people in Whakatane, Ohope and Edgecombe that would be interested to have some comment on this. So I wondered if you've considered more face-to-face, perhaps in Edgecombe, for instance, or just to galvanise a slightly different sector of the community.
Yeah, I mean, we could do it. I guess in terms of the recommendations, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, it's really around the concept of how we progress the structural plan through to it being where council could adopt it as a thing, make it an actual accepted structural plan. And so what we're looking at is a more targeted engagement rather than a structured, special consultative procedure or another process, trying to move quickly. The exact nature of that targeted engagement, we can sort of tease out some of those things. So it could involve some in-person sessions, could involve some online stuff. It's something we work with our comms and engagement team to put together the exact details of it. But really, the concept is trying to do a short, sharp process so that people can have a say, but it can come to before council for a recommendation, with both the CRG process having been used and also the wider public having an opportunity to have their say as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions of clarification for either the report or the appendix? All right, if not, I will call for a mover and a seconder for number one, that the Strategy and Policy Committee receive the Awakeri Structure Plan project update, and two, that the committee agree with the target engagement approach option 2 for the Awakeri Structure Plan. Moved by Councillor Hamill, seconded by Deputy Mayor Jukes. Any debates or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just find it fascinating watching this process from where you're going from like a greenfield situation with a small village to how you're actually doing all this. And I think it's quite considered, and it's just obviously very full of community engagement, and it's just been interesting to be part of it and see it happen. So thank you.
Councillor Hamill?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that sounds like we're going to get the right balance if we go with the targeted engagement. I think it would get lost in the LTP, and I think it's good to keep the momentum. So, yeah, really happy with where it's going.
Councillor James?
It's a good project, and you guys are doing a great job at how you're working through it. I don't think that, we're going to get real public interest in it until we come out with sort of a more, or closer to a finalised plan. A lot of people are just sort of, they know it's happening and quite happy the way it's going. But I think it's, once you come down to the detail, that's when the interest will come about. But I think everyone's behind it, or most are behind it anyway. Yeah, thanks.
Any other debate or comments on? I actually just have one thing in terms of what Councillor James said at the tail end. I think it's really important that we do reflect for those people who might have concerns about the project. Often when people have concerns, if they can see that those are reflected when we're doing reports or any surveys, they might not agree with it, but they just want to be able to see that they were heard. Right, no further comments. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Good job. We'll now break for a 15-minute morning tea break, and when we come back after the break, we'll have our Te Toi, Waka Whakarei and Reo Māori Policy report. Good morning again, everybody, and welcome back. We are now on page 59 of the agenda with the presentation of the Te Toi Waka Whakarei Māori Relationship Strategy Report. Welcome to the table, Donna, Morena Hone. So, Donna, you're presenting the report today?
Correct.
In your hands, thank you.
I te tuatahi tēnā koutou ngā pau o te rohe nei, koutou e mahi ana hei hāpai o koutou hapuri, o koutou iwi hoki. Nā o koutou manamanui, I puāwai ngā hua o tēnei rautaki, nō reira tēnei te mihi ki a koutou. Sorry, before Donna launches into the highlights, I thought I'd pick up on Maya's kupu yesterday and titiro whakamuri and kokiri whakamua to look back, to move forward. And that lies, I think, with you councillors who over the years have committed to the strategy by investment or by intent or just by support in these public forums. And despite all the challenges over the last year or so, where it feels like iwi and Māori are in the central government crosshairs, I applaud you for going beyond what sort of the minimum requirement is and doing what is right by our iwi partners. And that has flowed down through the organisation as well, to the exec and to the wider organisation. So I wanted to mihi to you for that. And one note as well, I remember in our LTP session where we put up the post-it notes, then there were comments about we're moving from strengthening our relationships into partnering, co-investment and working together. There was even something maybe Councillor Isles put up about mokopuna stories. You know, and that's a te ao Māori way of thinking of we do things for the generations to come, not for us in the now. So it's even that sort of thing. So I just wanted to mihi to you all at this time. So over to you, Donna.
Thank you, Hone, for those words. Very much appreciated by the councillors, present and past, no doubt.
O tēnā koutou I te koro mātua, nā kai kaunahera, me nā kaimahi o te kaunahera a rohe o whakatāne, and nā mahi nui Hone for your mihi and introduction. The purpose of the report today is to provide a progress on Te Toi Waka Whakarei, the Māori Relationship Strategy, and the recommendation before you today is that the Te Toi Waka Whakarei Year 4 report be received. And it's been 12 months since we last presented this report, and during that time a significant amount of work has been delivered across council. And rather than running through a whole list of achievements and activities that we've delivered to council over that time, I've been over the past 12 months since we last presented this report, I looked over that year and it struck me that this isn't simply a report about Toi Kotuia. It's a story of council's journey and how we've invested in our people and we've strengthened relationships with iwi and we've increasingly embedded partnership into the way we work. And like any journey, there have been successes, there have been challenges, and there have been valuable lessons. And so what I ask of you today is just to allow me to take you through 3 key themes that stood out for me. And that first theme is building confidence and capability. Many of our staff arrive with limited exposure to marae, tikana or te tiriti. And we understand this. There's limited exposure, uncertainty and even shyness can be barriers. And that's why we're focused on creating spaces where people feel safe to ask questions and to be vulnerable, because that's where growth happens. Expanding knowledge and building confidence over time. One of the highlights this year was our Te Tiriti o Waitangi workshops facilitated by Dr. Veronica Tawhai. Our councillors, our executive leadership team, our kaimahi and our iwi partners have all participated in these workshops. And through storytelling and history and open discussion, participants weren't simply learning about a document. They were exploring our shared history and reflecting on what Te Tiriti means to Aotearoa, to Māori and our community. And the wānanga was intense. that challenged assumptions, it sparked meaningful conversations, and it gave people a stronger understanding of how Te Tiriti connects to their everyday mahi within local government. Through Te Kahupapa, we've continued to invest in cultural capability across the organisation, and an important addition this year has been the Mātauranga Māori sessions offered to our elected members and executive leadership. Now, organisational change starts at the top. When leaders are willing to learn, ask questions and lead by example, it gives permission for others to do the same. And we're seeing that shift as part of our council culture. It's reflected in our bi-monthly mihi whakatau, which welcomes our new kaimahi. And in fact, just on Monday, our leaders were confidently using te reo Māori and embracing tikana, and this was a real reminder of how far we've come. But equally rewarding was hearing our new team members talk about the supportive, welcoming culture they experienced from the moment they walked into the council. I would like to acknowledge Maya and Rachel, our Pouwhiranaki, for their leadership and commitment in helping make this possible. And Maya and Rachel will be up at the table next to present the Reo Māori Policy, which we are all excited about. The foundations are now in place, and I believe they're creating lasting change in the way we work, in the way we lead, and the way we build relationships across the council. And that brings me naturally to my second theme, and that's the relationships that we've continued to strengthen. Now, relationships have always been at the heart of Te Toi Waka Whakarei. They're not built overnight, they're built over time through consistency and genuine engagement. They're built by showing up and having honest conversations and continuing to work together even when the pathway isn't straightforward. One achievement that stands out for me is mana whakahono arohi. And when I think about mana whakahono arohi, I don't just see an agreement, I see a significant and symbolic shift in our relationship. And this is what Te Toi Waka Whakarei set out to achieve. It is years of relationship building between council and iwi. It is founded on mutual respect and a willingness to learn, listen to one another and work differently. And reaching this point has taken commitment from both council and iwi. Now, since this report was prepared, Cabinet announced its intention to remove the mana whakahono arohi provisions from legislation, and like many iwi and councils across Aotearoa, we were saddened by that decision. But after reflecting on it, I keep coming back to one thought. Legislation can provide a framework for partnership, but it doesn't create relationships. If anything, this has reinforced for me just how important it is that we continue investing in those relationships through our Paumataho, our relationship lead model, our iwi resource agreements, our collaborative wānanga, and our regular engagement with iwi leadership. You know, much of this work happens quietly. It's through conversations, it's from listening, it's simply being present. And I'd like to acknowledge Haimona and Rosemary, our Paumataho, our iwi relationship leads, whose consistent commitment to nurturing relationships and continues to strengthen the trust that we've built with iwi. And if there is one message I'd like us to hold on to, it is this. These relationships need to outlast all of us. Iwi will always be here. Governments, legislation, elected members and staff will all change over time. But the relationships we build today need to be strong enough to endure and continue to grow. And it hasn't always been easy, but the journey has strengthened our relationships and created a strong platform for partnership. And that's what I'd like to talk about next. So now, if capability gave us confidence and relationships built trust, then partnership is where those two things come to life. And the establishment of iwi representation on the Waters Working Group is one of the best examples of what genuine partnership can look like. Working alongside Eastern Bay iwi and our neighbouring councils, Toi Kotoia helped facilitate a collaborative process that respected iwi decision-making and enabled iwi to determine their own representation. And it all happened in a really short space of time. It started from Waters update presentation to iwi Chairs Forum. From there, an iwi Waters workshop was quickly assembled, which resulted in an invitation for iwi to present to the Waters Working Group, and ultimately an agreement on iwi representation on this group. The Waters Working Group demonstrated what genuine partnership can look like. And one of our biggest learnings was that iwi should have been invited into the conversation earlier. That experience reinforced something important for me. When iwi are involved from the outset, they don't just contribute, they guide the conversation, enrich our thinking, and help shape better outcomes. This learning has already influenced the way we approach other kaupapa, including the Head Start and regional spatial planning. I would like to acknowledge Mayor Tankos, Steve and Nick Johansson for the advocacy and leadership they showed throughout this process. They remain committed to a collaborative approach and ensuring iwi were able to determine their own representation. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. And so that's what genuine partnership looks like, working together from the outset, sharing leadership and building trust. And that's how we can make better decisions and better outcomes for our communities. So looking ahead, the foundations are now in place. The next stage is to deepen and elevate our partnerships. Te Toi Waka Whakarei will continue to provide our long-term direction, but over the coming months we'll review and revalidate that strategy with Council and iwi. And this will help ensure it reflects our shared aspirations, it responds to the changing environment, and it sets a clear direction for the next phase of how we work together. And a key part of that will be introducing an annual partnership planning with iwi, beginning with the long-term plan workshop that will be coming up. And this will create that opportunity to share those aspirations and better understand each other's priorities and work programs and identify those opportunities and influence decisions earlier in the planning process. We've invested in capability, we've strengthened relationships, and we've seen what genuine partnership can achieve. Our focus now is building on that momentum, continuing to work alongside iwi and delivering better outcomes for our communities. Before I finish, I'd like to acknowledge our iwi partners for their continued willingness to work with us, to challenge our thinking and walk alongside us as we continue to strengthen our relationships. But I'd also like to acknowledge, as Honi did at the beginning, our elected members for your ongoing support, the important governance responsibilities you hold, your willingness to learn, ask questions and deepen your understanding. Your leadership has been instrumental in the progress we've made together. So I believe the Year 4 report demonstrates that Council is continuing to move in the right direction, and I'm excited about what we can achieve together in the years ahead. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Welcome your pātai.
Ngā mihi nui Donna. That was a beautiful kōrero. Supportive of ourselves, supportive of yourselves and the team, giving acknowledgement to those that have paved the pathway to get to this point. And I think any of us that are sitting around the table would heartily agree with the progress and the difference the Māori team has made internally as well as externally. Yeah. Can I invite questions from councillors, please, about the reflections of the strategy? Councillor James.
It's not a question, it's just a comment that thank you, Donna, for this report and your team. I found it really, really good, really great, really interesting to read it, and I just feel that it's imperative that we keep on travelling along the same track. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Dukes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate those comments. This is, now my 5th term on council, and it's just so enlightening to see how far we have come in that period, and it's just so great to see that we are still, we do still have a long way to go, but it's just nice to see us actually progressing and going in the right direction, and just thanks to your team for all the hard work they do in that space.
We might just break with protocol for the moment, and I'll just allow any additional comments if there's no questions of clarification.
Of a question?
Councillor Dennis has a question.
I've got a couple of questions. In regard to page 66, in regard to the, like we've already done mana whakahona with Ngāti Whare and Manawa, and there's three others there in that paragraph above the photos, which is a joint one with Ngāti Hokopu and Te Wharapaia. Who are they? And are we drilling down to hapu level with this, or are we?
Well, when mana whakahonoarohi was first introduced, it allowed hapu to be part of the legislation and be able to initiate those agreements. However, that was then since removed, and then it became only iwi were able to initiate the agreements. The indication from central government is that the agreements will no longer go forward as part of the reforms. So if your question is, will we be continuing with those agreements? Right now, I think we need to just pause and have a little time to think about the way forward. There may be other avenues that we can look into, and that's something that we are investigating. But I guess I reflect back to my comment where, you know, legislation, that may be a way to legislate or, you know, provide a document to legislate the partnership, but it's all in the relationship. And I think that is what brings the strength to what we do now.
Yeah, I agree with you. The wording can change, but the relationship goes on. What I was really interested in is Te Wharapaia. I don't recognise that name. What's that?
Oh, okay.
What entity is that? And
What, sorry,
what entity is that?
Oh, what entity is that? So that was with Ngāti Hokopu.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Ngāti Hokopu and Wharapaia is the hapu, essentially. So a lot of people refer...
The people of
Yes,
Ngāti Hokopu.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
That's good, thank you. Look, and just the comment that I'd like to make is that, and what you're touching on, the government can change the wording as much as they like, but I agree with everyone else that to build on the relationship we have with iwi at the moment and individual is really important, and I think we should just go forward, even if we change the wording for the government, and just create other agreements or whatever we do. And by the time the government works out that we've changed the wording, formed another agreement, the elections will have happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whittaker, did you have a question or a comment?
I'm just wondering, and it sort of came out of the Awakeri Spatial Plan that we had a presentation on, not today, but this is going back, and it talked about in the future, and we're going like 2050, there's going to be something like 24.8% of unemployed people between the ages of 15 and 30. And to me, that's concerning, and I'm wondering whether your department looks at that and goes, hey, can we sort of think 30 years ahead as to what jobs there may be or not be, and can we start to interact with maybe the learning institutions that we have here to try and say, this is what we're looking at, and with IT and that now taking over, this is what we're looking at. How do we prepare our people out there for possible jobs?
Yeah, I guess that could be a question for any committee or any paper that comes forward, not necessarily just our one. But yes, we have relationships with the institutions around here, but I'll be sure to table that with them and look to the future.
And one of that was when we did the visit to Minganui, and we went to the nursery there, right? And I found out that they couldn't sell any of their plants because the government's changed the legislation around riparian plants of streams, etc. So they're stuck with $1 million of plants. So this is another opportunity as, does council work to say, hey, we'll help you identify possibly where you can sell that? Because to me it's a great setup out there. I think government put in a couple of $1 million and they've got all this stuff sitting there.
Councillor, I think we can probably perhaps have that discussion as a group amongst ourselves offline at some point. At the moment, we're just kind of really talking about the strategy, reflections and where they are going forward. Yeah. Are you happy if we do that? Thank you. I have a question of clarification. Just in terms of the iwi Policy Hub, which was that funding from the Better Off funding was really instrumental in being able to grow and develop where we are now. Are we funded appropriately through the long-term plan to be able to keep up that momentum?
So the iwi Policy Hub, that is no longer continuing, as you would have heard through past meetings. So your question is, have we got the resourcing to be able to provide those services in some way going forward? We do have some funding available, and what we're always looking for is the best ways to be able to do collaborative, but also go across iwi with the services we provide. And so a good example of that I could give would be the resource management reforms that came through. What we did was we set up a joint collaborative wānanga with the council and with iwi, and we invited in an expert to be able to present that through to all of us so we could understand each other's part in that. What it's done by shifting it from the policy hub is it allows us to identify the right expert for the right piece of work, and it's not just looking at one iwi individually, it's going across the spectrum. So I think that works really well. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Councillor Boynton, do you have a question? If you don't have a question, I'm happy to move the motion so then we can move into debate. If you have a question, councillor? You're on mute.
Sorry, I had my hand up.
Yes. Do you have a question?
I had a comment. I did have some questions and I had a comment, but
if you could ask your questions now, that would be great, and then we'll move the motion and then we can move into comments and debate.
Okay. My question was around, because you mentioned in the report that, there is some pressure, I guess, on the relationships because of, current legislation that's impacting that. How confident are you with our iwi being strong and wanting to keep coming to the table if the table's been slightly moved sideways over there? Not sure if that's...
Thank you, Councillor Boynton. That's a great reflection because absolutely the last 2 years and probably a little bit longer has been quite difficult for iwi with the raft of legislative reforms that have come through and the demand for iwi to respond quickly with a very little resource that they have. So your question is how willing are they to come to the table with us? My response is they're very willing, and that is purely because we are standing alongside them. Our relationship is strong. We are constantly in connection with them, and they actually understand our pain points as much as we understand theirs. Anecdotally, I am receiving regular feedback from across many people on how respected our council is and how appreciative they are of the support that we are providing.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no more questions of clarification. Bishop Nibia.
Thank you. Thanks, Donna, for this great report, and I'll make some comments in the debate. But I just want to go back to the policy hub, te au o te awapunga. And you might have touched on this, and so I've been had a few other things going on. But you talk about it, so that's the policy hub that was set up under the Better Off funding's come to an end, and you talk about it having moved to a subscription model. Could you just explain a little bit more how that works?
As in the subscription model?
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so my understanding of that is it has different tiers, and the tiers has a different offering in the packages. It's up to iwi whether or not they would like to engage in those services. So it could be as not small, but it could be services such as submissions or just overview of their policy documents, and then it increases from there. And depending on the level of support that iwi requires, is the package that they would look into.
Supplementary on that. So an iwi would take a subscription for, say, a period of a year at a certain tier, and that would give access to a bunch of services kind of at free access to those services.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is that being taken up?
My understanding is that our iwi haven't taken that service up. I think what the Policy Hub did was it demonstrated that it is to have a pool of experts available is really a great thing to have. However, it also demonstrated that we need to be able to select our expertise, and sometimes that expertise that's within the Policy Hub doesn't match the work that they're doing. So they needed that flexibility. I think that the Policy Hub, though, did prove the concept, but it also showed that the relationships need to stay very much between the council and iwi, and they can delve into it where they require.
Right, any further questions or clarification? Can I call for a mover and a seconder, please, for that the Toi Waka Whakarei WC Māori Relations Strategy Year 4 report be received. Moved by Councillor Dennis, seconded by Councillor Hamill. All those in favour, say aye. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I was just going too quick there. Open for debate and all comments. Thank you. Councillor Boynton, did you have some comments? You're on mute, Councillor.
Ai, aroha mai. Ko te mea tuatahi mihi atu kia o koutou e mihi atu kia tātou kaimahi mō tō mahi nunui o tēnei kaupapa ki te whakamana, ki te whakahōnere, te huarahi, ki te whai, ki te tautoko, te honona o te kaunea hira rohe whakatāne me a tātou iwi o tēnei rohe. I just really wanted to acknowledge the work of our team here, and also ko tāwhitike tō haerena mai, kia kore e haere tonu, he nui rawa o mahi, kia kore e mahi tonu. We have come too far not to go further. There is too much work not to do more. And I think that whakatauki speaks to the mahi that you have done, but also to the mahi that is ahead for us. And I acknowledge the other comments of in the 4 years that our ropu has been established, there has been significant steps forward, not only in the relationship, but also to the dynamics and the opportunities, but also to the ability for the programs within the council to bring up, I guess, what people would call cultural competency, but really it is just an introduction into what is around us in our community, what is a living thing, what is a breathing thing. And it's also acknowledging too that our relationships with iwi is through te tiriti or waitangi, but iwi isn't just a one dimension. It isn't just a name on a paper and an entity that sits behind that label. It's all throughout our community. We sit everywhere. We are in every part of our community and our society. And so when we speak to relationships and the work that you've done to enhance those relationships, we've also spoken to the relationship with ourselves as a whole community. I want to acknowledge the, previous councillors and mayors and staff who were part of initially establishing this team and committing resources to it. To also mention Paul and also Michelle and other staff, previous staff members who laid the groundwork and the strategy itself, and all, of course, to yourselves who have been doing the hard yards, particularly at this time. And I think it's so important that you were there, that you are there, that this work is being done, even under a lot of the rhetoric that basically screams you shouldn't be there. And it's a saving grace for us that we can go strength to strength under such challenges, and to have you part of that, and to have our council proud of the mahi that you have done and recognise the value that it has given to all of us. So, kia ora koutou.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Me tanchos.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a couple of quick comments. The first one is just going back to when Judy Turner was Mayor of this council, and for the first time I think we made a clear strategic priority. We explicitly made it a strategic priority to work on relationships with iwi, hapu and whānau. And I want to thank all the councillors who were there then, and the continued support around the council table for this work. And we've again reiterated it as a strategic priority in our new LTP. So I want to acknowledge the political support that's so important for this work to be able to succeed. And then also I want to acknowledge the organisational support from then Chief Executive Steph O'Sullivan and current Chief Executive Steve Purdia, and across the organisation, and all of our GMs and right through the organisation, the support for this mahi, and which has brought it alive and means that we're able to do something really significant in this area. And of course, I particularly want to acknowledge you, Hone, as the GM, and Donna and your whole team, Toi Kotuia team, who do such incredible work. Just really want you to appreciate how much we value the work that you do. And I saw the way that you left interaction around the Waters Working Group and the quite quick decision making that needed to be, the request from iwi that came out of our iwi chairs, and the way you responded to that and pulled that together, I think was a real testament to your capacity as a team. And then the feedback I've heard through the iwi chairs that I talk to, that as a council we're really good to work with. They appreciate the work we've done as an organisation to get in the right space to have those relationships, and the way we continue to do that. And that's a testament to the work that you've done. So that really good feedback. And I also want to just acknowledge, as Mayor, the support you've given me in building those relationships and the work that I need to do in helping to facilitate that. And lastly, I'm just going to acknowledge and tautoko Tony's comments, and acknowledge the tensions that you personally face in these roles, because in permaculture we talk about the edge effect, where the place where two ecosystems meet, it can be the most productive space. So you got sea and sea species, you've got land and land species, and where they meet you've got that zone where you've got sea, land species coexisting, and something unique to that space itself. And you occupy that zone, you occupy the council institutional role and Te Ao Māori, and you live in that edge zone. And that's a really challenging place to walk. But it also can be enormously productive and valuable. So I just want to thank you for your work.
Thank you. Any other comments from members? I'm happy to give a few comments as we close up this part of the session. Yeah, I just want to say congratulations to everybody, and I really think that the Te Toi Waka Whakarei strategy is actually New Zealand leading, not just for local government, but for lots of other working in the private and the public sector. I think it really demonstrates that with time and patience and mutual respect, you can actually change outcomes for your community. I'm aware there are some in our community who are still very apprehensive about our investment with our iwi and our hapu and those relationships. And I just want to say to them, 50.3% is the unofficial Māori population of our district. That will continue to grow. And our district's future is so closely aligned with future with Māori that it's not funny. So I'd say, I'd just really like to encourage to learn more and embrace it, don't fear it. Now I'll call for those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, happily carried. Thank you everyone, that concludes that part of the report, but I think Hone and Maya now will be coming to the table with Rachel to give us an update on the Te Reo Māori Policy report, and we're looking at page 76. Welcome, ladies.
Kei ngā pau, kōrero o tēnei whare, ngā kanohi kitea o ngā hāpori, ngā māngai o tēnei rohe, mauri ora kia koutou. Tēnā koutou kua whakeimi mai nei tēnei rā, kia whakatairanga ake ai tō tātou reo rangatira, kia toitu ai te reo Māori, ki roto i tō tātou nei whare, no reira, tēnā tātou katoa. We're here today to present the Te Reo Māori Policy report, and the recommendation is that it is received. As Donna mentioned, Rachel and I are the Pou Whirinaki in Toikotuia, and part of our role is to lead the Te Kahupapa, the organisational cultural capability program for our staff, and part of that includes growing the understanding and normalisation of Te Reo Māori within the organisation.
O mauri ora kia tātou. This policy opens with the whakatauki, toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te whenua, which urges us to champion our language, honour our strength and safeguard the environment for the future. It also acknowledges the eponymous chief of this rohe, toi te huatahi, toi kai rākau, and reminds us of the example he set as an explorer, connector and innovator. The Te Reo Māori Policy also delivers on our reorua rautaki of bilingual practices within the Whakatane District Council. Reflecting on your Te Tiriti o Waitangi training, you'll recall that Article 2 of Te Tiriti o Waitangi relates to the responsibility to the active protection of taonga. Te Reo Māori is an intangible taonga of immense mana, and this policy is a tangible step towards championing, honouring and safeguarding it for now and the future. It's an intergenerational and mokopuna decision.
As some of you have already done today, I'd also like to acknowledge the huge growth we've taken on our organisational reo journey since I started here in 2019. I mihi to our staff who have been our Reo Māori champions, our Reo Māori advocates, and have held space for Te Reo Māori when not so long ago there wasn't much space for it. I also acknowledge those staff who opened opportunities for our organisation to continue to grow in this space throughout the years. So our progress has been a culmination of many small steps, things like the karakia that we see in all the meeting rooms in our whare, the bilingual headings on our policies, papers, signage and staff position titles, to, as Donna mentioned earlier, now our staff being able to run our own organisational mihi whakatau, all in Te Reo Māori to welcome our new starters. So this Te Reo Māori Policy is the next step in our organisational reo journey, and it's really just formalising the mahi that we're already doing, the way that we already work and will continue to grow. As you would have seen, there are 4 objectives in the policy, the first one being to recognise the importance and value Te Reo Māori has to our organisation and communities. We've got our 8 settled iwi, and as Leslie mentioned, our hapori are made up of around 50% Māori. So by formalising the value that we place on Te Reo Māori with this policy, it keeps us accountable on our organisational reo journey. The second objective is to support the appropriate, accurate and meaningful use of Te Reo Māori across the organisation. So with our different iwi come different meta or dialects, and so we just need to be aware when we're engaging with our different hapori, our different communities. And this policy is a step towards normalisation of Te Reo Māori within our organisation.
Tēnā no tātou. Whāinga tuatoru, Objective 3, build confidence and capability of our staff in using and understanding Te Reo Māori. The Te Kaupapa Work Programme establishes a coordinated pathway for strengthening cultural capability across the organisation, and this policy reinforces that direction by supporting our people to use Te Reo Māori with confidence and respect, helping us champion the language, uphold its mana, and better connect with and serve our communities. Whāinga tuawha. Strengthen relationships with iwi and hapu through respectful and meaningful use of Te Reo Māori. This policy reinforces that Te Reo Māori is a genuine mechanism for forging enduring, authentic relationships with iwi and hapu. And I'd like to pull on the whakatauki that Councillor Boynton shared about kei tawhiti tō tātou haere, and I mihi tū tāhi mihenare who shared those words, and that we have come so far in our journey. This is an investment in the ongoing mahi towards genuine partnership.
As an organisation, we've continued to make positive progress on our Te Reo Māori journey, recognising that meaningful change is achieved through consistent incremental steps. So we've now moved beyond awareness, and this policy reflects our commitment to the revitalisation of the language by normalising its use across operations and communications. We're also fostering an organisational culture that honours and upholds the identity of the communities we serve. We'd like to mihi to those of you who are on your own personal Te Reo Māori journeys and are taking steps to deepen your mātauranga Māori and confidence in the use of Te Reo Māori. We all know it's a lifelong journey, it's not an easy one, and it never ends, so big mihi to you all. Julie, seeing you confidently deliver the karakia yesterday in the council briefing, and Leslie, your mihi this morning, those are truly heartwarming moments, and I guess that's just kind of a reminder of the impact that the use of our reo can have. And finally, we'd also like to acknowledge and mihi to all of you as a rōpū, as a group, in being open and comfortable with the use of Te Reo Māori in our whare. And we're excited, and e poho kereru ana mātou. Poho kereru means proud, poho meaning your chest, and kereru, obviously the bird, much like a kereru that sits there with his chest puffed out proudly. E poho kereru ana mātou, me poho kereru tātou. So we're proud, we should all be proud that Whakatane District Council now has a Te Reo Māori policy. So yeah, we're happy to take any questions, any pātai that you may have. Tēnā tātou.
Ngā mihi kōrua. Yeah, look, I think it's another exciting sort of step in the direction of the council. Just to clarify for council, this is actually an internal staff policy, but it's been brought to us to receive it and hopefully endorse it. But we're happy to take any questions. Deputy Mayor Dukes, thank you. Sorry, I'm struck again with a comment, but that's okay. I just really wanted to publicly be able to thank, particularly, Maya for her help with me on my reo journey. I have a long way to go, but baby steps is the only way you're ever going to get there. And I just also wanted to take the opportunity to encourage others around the table. If you have some time and you have the opportunity, it's really great, and it is actually empowering to actually take these little baby steps. So I encourage everyone, if you can, to actually learn more and grow. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Should we just put the motion to the floor and then open for comments? Question of clarification. Thank you, Councillor Hamill.
Thank you. Leslie. Ngā mihi to you both. Thank you for your presentation. It's really exciting. I have a question that's slightly left field, and I see Annalise in the background, but when I'm driving around, we still have some signs around Aotearoa that don't have the macrons on the whakatane, and for how much of that is waka kotahi for those, it would be really cool to see that embraced wider than just Aotearoa, for instance, and tauranga and whatnot. So is that on a waka kotahi program?
That's an appropriate left field question. I noticed it myself.
Morning everyone, and through the chair. So we have a process around as signs are renewed that we make sure that their spelling, including the use of macrons, is correct. Our team's actually proactively worked with Maya and the Toikotuia team to go through and check every single one of our road name across the district and get the spelling correct. So we've got that all basically ready to go now. As those signs are damaged, lost, stolen, we can replace them with the correct one. To go through and proactively replace every single one, it would be a significant cost. So it's just something that we're rolling out as we would replace them anyway. Any of the signs on the state highways, so like Awakeri, Te Teko, all of those places, they are state highway NZTA signs. It's made me think it's probably actually something we should reach out to our NZTA partners and make sure that they have the ability to do those similar checks, and yeah, we'll work with Maya and the team to see what we can do to advocate in that space.
Thank you for that update.
Thank you, Annalise, for coming to the table. Councillor James.
Yeah, just a quick one. Under financial implications for this would be pretty well minimal or next to nothing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, thanks.
Great, quick answer. Councillor Boyne, do you have a question or a comment? Because we do have another question in the room.
It was a question.
Okay, proceed. Yeah, thanks.
And I'll leave my comments for for the comments. I just had a question with the te reo. I guess it's the semantics, or I know that it's mentioned in there about tekana, but it's a te reo policy. Normally, in the past, it used to be te reo me ona tekana. Is that part, that means all of that too, if it's under te reo policy? Because the tekana goes with te reo, I guess it's, yeah. So I just had a question around that. Te reo me ona tekana?
Yeah, they do roll hand in hand. This has a focus on the reo. Obviously, we've got other guidelines like our organisational mihi whakatau guidelines, which kind of cover those tikanga that we have in the whare, as well as other guidelines as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Mayor Tunchels. Yep.
Thank you for this. It's great. Love it. Question is on in the policy itself on 3.2.5, it talks about providing pronunciation guides, audio resources, and optional workshops for staff to improve their skills and knowledge. And just wanted to check in that elected members can get access to some of that as well.
Yeah, we can definitely make that available if you guys are interested.
Thank you. And I just, kind of behind that, I've had occasions where I know we have a Waiata group, and I managed to make, I think I made one of them a long time ago, sadly. But, you know, sometimes having access to something, a recorded version, you can listen to it in the car and practice it, and we can actually kind of learn ourselves if we got access to some of those audio resources.
Yeah, awesome. Yep, we do have those resources, so we can definitely share those with you guys.
Thank you.
Any further questions or clarification? Right, well, we have mover and a seconder, please, that the Strategy and Policy Committee receive the Te Reo Māori Policy Report. Moved by Deputy Mayor Dukes, seconded by Councillor Hamill. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. I'll beg your pardon, Councillor Boyton, did you have another comment or debate?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were having comments.
Oh, I did that again. Oh, backpedal. All right.
Come before the movers.
Yeah. All right. We will open for debate and comments. Thank you. Councillor Boynton.
now I know what I was going to say. No. And he mihi atu kia koutou anō mō tō mahi kua tātou reo he reo rangatira, te kai o te rangatira he kōrero. So just acknowledging once again, similar to the previous report, and that the action itself speaks to the mahi that is being done, and also supports the work that's already happening within the organisation. It really is a proud moment for all of us that it provides an example that we have this policy under the current, constraints. It really does show that what's on the ground and the relationship that's on the ground is very different to what we may hear elsewhere. And I really mihi to all of the staff for bringing this forward. I was really proud of the fact when we're going to introduce the policy on submissions and having submissions be able to be presented in te reo and support for that to happen. And like I said in the previous comment, part of the cultural journey of learning about Māori, learning te reo, is really a introduction and a big welcome to an invisible world that was invisible to you before but has been all around you before. And I really just want to acknowledge the work that you've done to provide another door for that to happen. So mihi atu kia koutou.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other thoughts or comments from councillors? Councillor Hamill.
So this is just a general comment. That's not allowed. Yeah, okay. Ngā mihi to you all, and I just want to thank Maya particularly for helping me on my te reo journey, and also acknowledge the little things that make a difference. Like, for instance, in our emails and our internals, it's helping us to correct and get the macrons in the right place, so it normalises it. We can see what is right, and that's huge. Just little changes like that I really value. Thank you.
Anything further from councillors? I'll just put all those in favour once again. Please say aye. Aye. Again, carried. Ngā mihi nui, kōrua. Well done, Rachel, for your presentation. Okay, folks, we now move to item 9.5, the Transport and Investment Logic Map Approval. This is on page 86. And welcome to the table, Annalise and Joe.
Morena, everyone. So thanks for having us along today. I'll just give a quick summary of the report. So this report captures the discussions in the briefing session that we had back in February this year. And so it's all about the really early steps of our activity management plan, asset management plan, and long-term plan development. So this specifically is about the investment logic map, and just to recap, an investment logic map is a simple one-page logic model that justifies the investment, linking problems, benefits, strategic responses, and it's really a way of focusing decision makers on the why before the what when we're looking at where funds are directed, and making sure that we can deliver the greatest strategic value and community outcomes. So during that session, we reviewed the current investment logic map that we have in the 24 to 34 LTP period, alongside sort of updated context in the transport environment, things that have changed over the last 3 years. And there was general agreement from councillors that the current ILM was largely fit for purpose, and the 4 key benefits and problem statement themes remained. So the key problem statements was around resilience, asset deterioration, safety and growth, and the key benefits were around resilient and future-proof, accessibility, safety and environment. There was some feedback around altering some of the priorities, recognising that resilience, particularly on our transport network, is a significant issue affecting a lot of our communities right here and now, and linked to the future development and growth strategy to enable our district to grow and to support that with the transport system. We need to make sure that we're addressing those resilience issues as well as we're looking forward to those growth opportunities. So that's kind of the main crux of what was discussed, and so this report is just bringing all of that back to an official council committee meeting, presenting the updated ILM, which has included that feedback from the briefing session, and it's just seeking endorsement from the Strategy and Policy Committee so that we can include it in our activity management plan. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions from councillors? Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Annie. Just going to bullet point 3 on page 87, the resilient and future-proof transport system. Is that strong enough? Is there room possibly to have add alternative transport systems as well that could be explored?
We can always look at sort of tweaking the wording, but I think that because these are, trying to condense a whole lot of information down into a one-pager, the view of resilient and future-proofed was around looking at those alternate transport options, particularly like active and public transport. So it's having that sort of future focus. If there's desire and agreement around the table, we could certainly include alternate in there as well, but yeah, just being mindful that we just don't want to get them too wordy, but happy to take feedback. This is the council's ILM document. We're just here to help facilitate it happening.
Supplementary, if I may. Annie, my reason really for getting that in is in view of, amalgamation outlooks and what have you, and the fragmentation possibly of the Bay of Plenty region as we know it, that if we have got a foot in the door there, indicating from a Whakatane District Council perspective, the issues that we have with transportation, it could help sway in our direction. So that would be my rationale behind wanting to see something along those lines added, if I may.
Can you just clarify for us what you would class as alternate?
Well, we've got to look at on-demand services. We've got to look at private transport options that are available and which are currently available in Whakatane now, i.e. Waka Eastern Bay Community Transport. So a matter of how those options could be funded, how they can better service our communities, because it's been for many, many years, we've been part of the wider Bay of Plenty, we again sort of get the crumbs, or we have to go for options which population base wise is about all we can afford. So we've got to look at, there is got to be better ways, and especially looking towards the Awakeri development as well. If we don't start now, we're going to be left behind.
Perhaps a question from me to Annalise. So bearing in mind what Councillor Isles is saying, and this is about the strategic logic map, is it appropriate to put it in here? Does it make a difference if it's in here or not?
Yeah, it's certainly appropriate to include in here because this is about capturing what those strategic priorities are. And it does make a difference because this is one of the key pieces of sort of displaying what that strategic direction is, and it helps inform future funding and investment decisions. Like I say, it's somewhat captured in those top two benefits around a resilient future-proof transport system and improved accessibility, connectivity and travel reliability. But if we want to specifically call out alternate transport modes, we can certainly weave that into the resilient future-proof benefit as well. I won't try and come up with the word right here and now, but something basically just specifically calling out alternate transport options as well. If that's what the consensus is, we're happy to make that happen.
Just a moment, folks. Can I just kind of get a bit of an indication around the table, if you're happy for Annalise to kind of include a phrase or a term indicating alternates in systems? Pardon? Yeah, it looks like there's general agreement. Mayor Tanchos.
Apologies. Outlining what alternates?
Just to include, for Annalise just to include in the phrasing of that bullet point 3, looking at alternate, whether it's public or private modes of transport, to be part of the logic map.
Oh, yeah.
Is that correct? If councils are generally in agreement with that, we can just make that the resolution subject to minor amendments. Yeah. All right. Thank you, councillor. Thank you, Annalise. Councillor Boynton, question.
Kia ora, thank you, Annalise, for your mahi, and mihi atu kia koe, o kia koutou. I just had a general question. With the considerations and risk part of the report, is there wider consideration needed of upcoming changes to of legislation, like, for example, rates capping that may directly impact the amount invested in this plan? And if we do commit to this here, do we still have some wiggle room because we don't know what the figures are? Like, are we directly committed to this if we approve it today?
Yeah, so through the chair, great question. So this investment logic map is all about setting the strategic direction and the community outcomes that are sought. It's not so much about the particular dollar values or funding streams. So it is a consideration in the broader activity management plan development, but for this specific investment logic map, it's more about focusing on what that strategic direction is that's wanting to be achieved. It does then come into play when we apply for funding and those sorts of things. That's why it is really important to make sure that all of our priorities are captured in here. But yeah, we don't need to go into the detail of some of those changes in legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of clarification from members? Okay, if not, I'll have a mover in Councillor Hamill, seconded Councillor Isles, that the Strategy and Policy Committee received the Transport Investment Logic Map, and that the Strategy and Policy Committee approve the updated investment logic map for 2737 Transport Activity Management Plan, subject to minor amendments made at the meeting. Open for debate. Mayor Tanchos.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one quick comment, because I'm very supportive of the changes that we've proposed and that they're being taken up. In conversation with the Chief Executive, since we had the workshop, he brought to my attention that it might have implications down the line for our growth planning, because we've de-emphasised growth. And if you think about the housing development and the strategic priorities we've made around growth in housing particularly, we wouldn't want to set up an investment logic that made it harder to advocate for the kind of transport planning that we need. But I think it's probably okay for now, but that when we come to the next LTP, so I just say pre-signalling, and also we may be in a different configuration in terms of local government anyway, but just pre-signalling that we might at that stage want to re-emphasise growth as a key component of our investment logic. That was all.
Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, again, just going back to that bullet point 1, and when we discussed the special purpose roads and the fare rate and what have you, again, do we get that message into there as well? In bullet point 1, the resilience of the highest priority problem, recognising frequent intense storm events, etc., does that get woven into that bullet point?
Is it okay for me to comment now that we're in debate?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I'll allow that.
Again, that's quite a specific situation going on, and it is a very important and significant situation, but it's not so much to do with the strategic direction. I think that the strategic direction that's set out here is very well aligned to the direction we're taking, and that we're trying to resolve that matter, but needing to specifically call it out in our investment and logic map, I don't think would be required, and I don't think it would have much impact on how we're progressing through that matter anyway.
Thank you, Annalise. No further thoughts, comments or debate? If not, I'll say all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Joe and Annalise. Right, we're going to change tack now, and as we move to page 92, we're going to receive the 6 monthly update report on the climate pathway. And welcome to the table. We've got Lainey, Grethel, and I'm sorry, I don't know who the other person. Kate.
Morena tātou. Apologies from Lou Hunt, who is on bereavement leave today, so I'm standing in. So this morning we have 2 papers from the Climate and Resilience team. The first will be the update on our 6-month update on our climate pathway delivery, and the second is the progress report and update on the adaptation project. So for the first report prepared by Gretel, this is the report on the January to July 2026 progress on our climate pathway, noting that earlier in the year you had a much more extensive report on the first half of that 3-year strategy, and also noting that we will be moving to a refresh or review of that climate pathway in line with the LTP. So our intention is to have an updated climate pathway in 2027. So this is our main strategy for resilience. The report is similar in format to the one that was prepared for the last 6-month period that was prepared by Georgia Mistrevsky-Gray, and it basically summarises all of the activity. So Gretel's going to give you a few highlights from that report.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I will highlight some of the points. On the solar tranche 2, we progressed installing solar panels across 5 sites. I want to mention that the cumulative cost savings for the last period from November 2025 to June 2026 is $34,753, which is great. The solar tranche 2 is also projected to deliver another almost $6 million in cumulative energy cost savings over the next 25 years. On the ICA grant, Papakainga Marae from Nai Tuhoi and Roe Hona Marae from Ngāti were accepted, and they got 80% grant funding for their solar panels. Also, Te Teko Racecourse Park, a community-owned site. This together with Whakatane War Memorial Hall and Edgecombe War Memorial Hall, which are WDC-owned, received 80% support from the ICA Community Resilience Program through MBOP as well. On the EV scoping, the objective or our role as WDC is to enable the greener emissions through the council. So we own the car parks and try to support tourism and visitor access. That's why the EV charging is identified within the climate pathway. Apart from that, the Generate Zero platform continued to be our platform to calculate council emissions, with Toitu audit being yesterday and today. Thank you. Open to questions.
Thank you, Greta. Do we have any questions from councillors? Starting with Councillor Dennis, thank you.
Thank you very much. Your first statement there, talking about the $32,000 savings in the last year, I thought at the beginning of this year it was announced we'd made $64,000 savings, and so I'm surprised it's now only 32. I know originally it was planned to be 32, and then we had a presentation where Lou was excited that it, for some reason, had gone up to 64. So had that been a mistake, or is this a readjustment? Or because I know if you go to December or November, you multiply that out across 12 months, that will come to something like $54,000 savings over the year. But obviously, it moderates through April and May. But we were told then it was 64 for the previous. So what's the difference? Do you know?
So this is the amount for the 6 past months.
6 months. It was 32. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamill.
Easy one. I've got a couple of questions, if I may. It's really good to get an update. Well done to the team. What progress have we made in our light vehicle fleet and electrifying that? What sort of percentage is our light vehicles transition from petrol, diesel to electric? Do we know?
Yes, so last year with Georgia, you guys had a swap, 9 new vehicles for EV, and now what I'm working with is for EV infrastructure, so to add charges for the EV vehicles throughout the council.
Okay.
We can come back to you with the proportion of our light vehicles that are currently full EV. We've also been doing some work at Executive on reviewing the larger vehicles, so the utes specifically, and there are 6 utes due for replacement this financial year, and the current intention is to at least 5 of those to be plug-in hybrid utes, which do have a lower emissions rating. I'm pushing for more. I'd like to see full EV utes personally, but we'll get there one day.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's good. And I just wanted to tease out, it's really good progress again with the solar and the tranche 2. Have we been investigating whether we can expand that to with non-network solutions? So we've got a battery storage and we can give back to the network. Have we had discussions with Horizon about that? Or is that outside our scope? Or...
So we have solar batteries in some of the places. Actually, for these, for the ECA sites, all of them have batteries because it's about resilience and to be able to provide help to the community when we don't have power, for example. We have a scope talking about new batteries for this building that doesn't have in other buildings, but that's upcoming.
Can I just add through the chair, the wider charging network is a priority for the team and looking at the capacity to upgrade and expand that. We understand that Trust Horizon are interested in making sure that we are well set up to do that, both at council and in the community. And I'm not sure if council's aware, but there's been recently a grant of 60 million from central government to charging networks, and we know that approximately half of that has been received by ChargeNet, who are the largest charging infrastructure company in New Zealand, and we are talking to them about trying to make sure we get a share of that.
Thanks for that.
That's all the questions from you, Councillor Hamill. Okay, can we now have Mayor Tanchos and then Councillor Whittaker?
Thank you. My questions are... Oh, sorry.
Beg your pardon, yeah. Mayor Tanchos first, thank you.
That's right. Thank you. And it's interesting, there are some new options coming online now, particularly from Chinese companies, which actually seem like quite viable options. My question was around the charging infrastructure, which I have a keen interest now that I've taken on the previous mayor's EV. I'm very aware of the importance of a charging network. So I just wanted to probe into that a bit more. So it's great to hear that there's money coming from government for investment into the broader nationwide infrastructure, I guess. And so I just want to be clear about, in terms of what the work that we're doing, are we looking at, what are we kind of looking at? Our own facilities, presumably across the district? Are we partnering with other, what are we doing here?
I'll do my best. So, and this is mostly from my personal interest in this space rather than the work I do here at Council, but my understanding is that currently the charging network is set up on, it is a private commercial kind of system. There are probably exceptions to that, but there are obviously some big players, and they have taken it upon themselves to invest in charging throughout the country. There are fast chargers that are public, and there are slower chargers that people install at home. We have the slower ones here at Council, so as you've referred to, there's one around that side of the building, and then there's a bunch of them over here that are for our fleet vehicles, and we'd like to increase the capacity for council-owned vehicles. In terms of the charging network through the district, we think that's going to be private. It's not, we don't have excess budget to invest in joint ventures, and actually it's not the preferred option anyway for the charging network companies. So all we can do really from council is just highlight to those companies that there's an opportunity here, and that we, as a council, our role is merely just to influence and educate. We don't regulate the space, but we can try to encourage more use, and therefore justification for those companies to invest in our district. So that's kind of how it works, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker.
Yeah, my question's around batteries. The one at Wharfside, could you tell me what the capacity of that battery is, please? Is it installed or is it not installed yet?
It's not installed yet, and I can tell you when I have the right number, because I don't have it right now.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Thank
That's
you.
okay. Yes.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions about the funding, and while I see there's no budget considerations anomalies in the report, just checking that the 20% of co-funding that we contributed to ECA, and well done on getting the ECA grant, by the way, I love the word grant. So the remaining 20% was already within our budget? Yes, and also the loan from Trust Horizon for those other solar panels, that was also within our budget scope.
We did bring a paper through to council to seek approval for unbudgeted expenditure, that one on the basis that it was a very short payback period and it would more than pay for itself.
All right, thank you for that. No further questions or clarification? Right, well, we'll call for a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Whittaker and Councillor James. Any debate or further comment? If not, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Well done, thank you very much. Thanks, Tony. And I think ladies are staying at the table, and we're moving to 9.7, page 102. And this is the Climate Adaptation Implementation Report, and we've got Lainey and Kate.
Thank you. So this paper is seeking your endorsement of a proposed climate adaptation delivery approach going forward. So this is a reset of the original programme plan, which was originally instigated by Jeff Farrell and his team, and that included the first phase, which was the climate change risk assessment, which is now complete. The Adaptation Explorer was part of that and is now live and available for our communities to use. Kate has joined us recently and has stepped into that role. Jeff has now vacated, and she's brought some really great experience and has sort of looked at how we can move forward. Obviously, the context is now different. There's a lot of new changes, both in legislation but also in other programs that other entities are launching, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, hazard assessments and so on. So we are proposing a shift towards actively managing risks by embedding them into all of our planning and infrastructure decisions. And Kate will talk through some of the details around what she's proposed as the plan for the next stage. We think this will improve consistency It will help to support our communities and try to make it really clear how they can respond actively to address climate hazards in the future. So over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Lainey. As Lainey's outlined, Council's established a strong foundation through the work that Jeff and other teams across the organisation completed to deliver the Climate Change Risk Assessment and the Adaptation Explorer. That really builds our understanding of the climate risks across the district, and that involved input from communities, iwi, hapu, so that was a very valuable piece of work that sets us up very strongly to move forward in this area. As Lainey indicated and Dan and Nicholas outlined this morning, there are changes that are coming that impact this space. The regional spatial plan will sit above adaptation planning, and we can provide more information as this becomes a bit clearer. The Climate Change Response Amendment Bill was released on the 15th of July, so very recently, and local government and councils, adaptation professionals are working out what that will actually mean, so we'll keep you updated and that will feed into our work as we go forward. But what it really means is that it impacts the role of local government in climate adaptation planning. It will require adaptation plans for priority climate risk locations and for these to be linked to the regional spatial planning processes. So today the proposed approach for the adaptation implementation for the council, it will really align with that emerging national policy and positions us to take a proactive and risk-based approach to climate adaptation and resilience going forward. We're looking at 6 areas of focus over the next 12 months, and I'll just run through those quickly. The first is around integrating climate risk into planning, infrastructure and investment decisions. So it's really working across all the teams. We actually already have some good work underway, but it's about reinforcing that, aligning it across the teams and making it sure it's fit for purpose. And that will integrate with the LTP that's upcoming and the spatial planning processes we've been talking about. Second will be a focus on maintaining our climate risk screening and assessment tools. So making sure that the data that we hold and we're using with Adaptation Explorer is accurate, fit for purpose, and is updated as appropriate. So we have new data sets coming from Bay of Plenty Regional Council around coastal inundation and coastal erosion. So we'll work with our GS team and that data as it comes through. We'll also be thinking about what data gaps we might have and that we might need for our future planning processes. The third one is around building staff capability and organisational consistency. We have some champions across the organisation. I think one was sitting in the seat just previously. So people are engaged on this topic, but it's about reinvigorating that network, making sure we've got advice, education and support for our teams as we go through these processes. The next is around probably some more scientific methodology. There are processes around climate adaptation. We may get government guidance on how we are to approach climate adaptation. We don't know if that will happen or what that will look like. But there are some best practice methodologies, dynamic adaptive pathways. So there'll be a sort of piece of work in the background to make sure that we have the information that we need and potentially to develop a system that will work for our council and our district. The fifth point is around that ongoing community work. And I think it'll be important to work with those other engagement processes that are already happening. So through Toi Kotaria and existing partnerships and activities. But really it's a community conversation alongside making sure council can meet the requirements that we'll have in the space. And the last one is really focusing on, it's a changing landscape in terms of legislation, making sure that we are clear on what's coming and what we need to do, and feeding back to our teams and to council on that. And I'll leave it there and open to any questions.
Thank you, Kate. Do we have any questions of clarification from councillors? Councillor Dennis?
Kate, you'll have to forgive me, but that was extremely wordy, and I still can't actually work out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and when we're going to do it. So you talk about future reports on priority communities identified for adaptation planning, etc., etc. Hopefully I'm on the right agenda. But I'm just really interested in, this all talks about the backroom stuff, and obviously you're very skilled at what you're doing, because you obviously use words I don't understand, so good on you. But when the rubber meets the road, when you talk about priority communities identified for adaptation planning, what does that actually mean? I mean, we can sit in rooms and conferences and plan things to death, but when it turns to crap out there, like it did that last big storm we had, where we had trees down across Braemar Road and Manawa Road and blocked the whole lot off, and I had a guy there at a road stop at the bottom of Manawa desperately trying to get a bottle of oxygen up there to his father, who was running out of oxygen and desperately needed it. Where does the rubber meet? How does that, all your planning, all that, come down to that thing?
I think this...
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's totally fine. And we're also happy to provide ongoing information that is more digestible for our teams and the community as well. It's a complicated space. But I think there's two parts to that. One is community resilience, and that links into our emergency management teams. So that is maybe a separate piece of work, but they're interconnected and interlinked, and that's why we sit in the same team and Delaney's team at council. From a regulatory perspective, I think councils are being asked to think long-term on their infrastructure and growth pathways, and to build in, not to overcook initial short-term decisions, but to build in resilience over the long term. So that's really what's coming from government, is to have key points in your decision making that consider climate change at the relevant time. So for sea level rise, short-term decisions, you might not need to make any changes or add additional investment, but if you're looking out to a 50-year project, then you need to be looking more closely at that information.
So bringing that into my language, does that mean that all this planning one day will mean that we will put into our local plans that no one's allowed to plant a row of trees within 20 metres of the road or something like that, to actually, I mean, to me, if we really bring it back down to basics, if we do all the planning, is that the sort of thing we're going to look forward to, so that someone can say, actually, I'm really sorry, but that's a major road to that community, you're not allowed to plant trees within 30 metres of the road boundary, to prevent trees being blown down in these horrific storms we seem to be getting more of.
Just if I just interject there, I think it's probably more, the adaptation plan is less about all the practical doing steps, and it's more the strategy that will result in the action plans that will address the sorts of things you're talking about, like blocking of emergency routes and things like that.
So, Madam Chair, how long will it take to get from the adaptation plans to the actual plans?
It's a really good point. It was one that I had myself looking at those 6 bullet points. There was only one that related to the community readiness and preparation and, looking at that outcome, but I think Lainey's got...
Yes, I'd love to jump in there. And actually, I'd like to recognise I also struggle because there are a lot of words here that mean similar things, and some people kind of use them interchangeably, but we try not to because they are different. And these programs are connected, as Kate has recognised. There's evacuation planning with communities, and there's CERT teams that have been working with our emergency management team, and also a heap of work being led by MBOP. So at group level, they've given us some strong direction about where we can and where we should be working, and where sort of they're leading in some spaces. And it's taking us a bit of time to navigate that. As you can imagine, there's sort of what's our responsibility versus the group and so on. But we are, I think, making good headway in terms of working with communities on evacuation and emergency response. The adaptation planning is a little bit different, and we've received some quite fuzzy legislation, to use Kate's word actually, which is really looking into responsibility and liability and where that will fall, and how when things do happen, who's going to pay for it and who's going to be responsible. So it's still quite unclear, but we're doing our best to kind of respond to that side of things, and that's why the approach that Kate's proposing today is adaptive, but also, I think, really practical in terms of the things that we're focusing on, making sure we can control versus being ready to respond to the things we can't. But alongside that, our emergency management team are spending quite a bit of time understanding the needs of the specific communities. So that's the kind of on-the-ground, hands-on stuff. And what I can tell you today is that there's a wānanga planned for, I think it's October, where essentially the whole team will come together and talk about their role in how that all works together. So I hope that gives you some confidence that...
But into what happens together? Emergency management?
Yes, so the on-the-ground piece of how making sure our communities are resilient and prepared for when things happen, and then that there's clarity about who picks up the bill for that, and also what our role is in terms of, in the future, yes, we may see a regulatory role for council to say, actually, you're not allowed to do that there, and so on. And that's all becoming clearer, but it is taking some time. And also how this side of the team look ahead and make sure that we as an organisation are prepared for what the longer term adaptation approach looks like. So there's a proactive piece, a reactive piece. They have to work together, and we're responding to a lot of change at the top.
So in your big wānanga coming up, are you going to include people at the bottom, like the CERT teams?
Yes, well, we are going to include our emergency managers who are working with them, sitting at the back here today.
But in an emergency, when all turns to custard and you lose your bridges, the CERT teams are out there by themselves, so wouldn't they be involved? Because my understanding is some of your people higher up in your organisation don't even know what a CERT team is and what they do, and that in emergencies is double ups.
Excuse me, Councillor, we're getting a little bit off track for the adaptation plan that we're discussing today. I think you've got some really valid points, and I share some of those concerns about the practicalities of our local communities, and the establishment of new CERT teams. So hopefully by the time October comes around, we'll get a little bit more clarity, being able to have a joint discussion with everybody. I had Councillor Hamilton, Mea Tanchos. Was your question in the same relation? No, okay. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Mine has been answered. Thank you, Lainey, for clarifying that. So it was just following up on priority 5 with the adaptation planning, and I know our communities are asking for more clarity, and I was really just seeing who leads that piece of work in the council. Is it the emergency management team? Was it community partnerships? So how does it dovetail together? Because our community groups are looking for guidance. So thank you for helping with that. And just so no real question, but I've had good feedback on the Adaptation Explorer tool.
Thank you, Councillor. Mea Tanchos.
Thank you. I have two questions, if I may. The first one is around the projections and assumptions that underpin or will underpin our planning, because it's always been a concern for me that we tend to rely on the I can't remember what it's called now, the intergovernmental panel, and whose science is always conservative because it lags behind because of the political process it has to go to get accepted. And so it's always concerned me that we rely on assumptions which are not in tune with the latest research, potentially. And also the timeframes we look at, and you referred to this in one of your answers, you know, we often give an arbitrary cut-off date that we look at impacts up to a certain time, but the impacts don't stop in 50 years or 100 years. They continue to accumulate. And so, again, we have the potential that we're looking within too short a time frame for very long-term decisions. And if we think about like what we're doing in Awakeri and the impact on future settlement patterns, we don't want those to work for 100 years. They want to be viable for centuries. So my first question is around that, around the assumptions and projections that underpin the work that we do in this space.
I'm happy to answer that, and I won't get into the science because that gets really, really complicated. But we're having quite a lot of discussions across our teams at the moment around what we should be using for the LTP in terms of future climate projections. There's been some scientific recommendations that sort of the worst case scenario and the best case scenario are not particularly realistic anymore, and that we're actually moving in from both ends. So we're trying to understand what that means for us as an organisation. And modelling that we're already using, that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council have done, and nationally uses a variety of different projections. So it's a complicated space. There's a general sentiment across local government at the moment that we would like more guidance from government around that so that we can have a consistent approach. So there is sort of sector feedback on that at the moment as well. But the conversation I was having yesterday with our teams is that we need to probably keep things open so that we have flexibility whilst using best practice as far as we can at the moment. So, yeah, again, it's
the danger with government guidance is you've got ministers who appear to not believe that climate change is real.
Yeah. Australia has just released national guidance, so that's sort of quite interesting as well on that. They've got 3 scenarios, a high, medium, low.
Lainey, you have a comment?
I was just going to, I guess, make an observation to Mayor Tanchos's point that it is an enormously complicated and complex space. We're a small team and we're doing our very best to navigate and understand. We're not full-time climate scientists, but we do try to keep abreast of the messaging that comes through and take account of the political machinations as well. And I think Kate has answered that really well, but just acknowledging that not only are we a small team, we're a small country. And actually a lot of the international science and guidance doesn't really apply in some contexts. And so it's future thinking, and it's sort of, it's a kind of the unknowns on steroids, really. So we have to be practical. We have to balance what is within our control, what is our role, how can we best deliver that with the limited budgets that we have and the resources available to us. But yeah, I think essentially Kate's answered the question, I hope. So just observing that.
And I accept the huge level of uncertainty in it, and thank you for the great work that you do in this space, because it is very difficult. My other question, if I may, is around the dynamic adaptive pathway planning. So what I understand of that approach, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's kind of leaving options open in the face of uncertainty, and also that there's trigger points along the way. So kind of doing planning that leaves options open as much as possible as time goes on, and then has kind of trigger points which constrain decisions or set you down decision pathways, I guess. Is that right? And how, it comes back a bit to Councillor Dennis's question earlier, how does that apply in a specific case that we might deal with as a council?
Yes, thank you. You're correct. It is a process where, say you're looking at a specific roading project that was staged, that you might be delivering stage 1 in 5 years, stage 2 in 30 years, and you might have a 50-year view. So alongside that, you would set the climate projections. So you might expect flooding to increase, and you might have 3 different numbers for a best case, a realistic case, and a worst case scenario. So you would design your roading to what's most cost effective, what delivers the service for your community, what delivers resilience for what you think might be happening at the time you're going to build that. When you come to actually look at the investment and the design levels for each of those stages, you would do a check back in. So you would, at the very start of your project, you would build in some thresholds and some triggers so that you can make informed decisions at each point of investment, so that you're delivering resilient infrastructure for your community into the long term. And that's really aligned with what the government is going to be expecting us to do, I think. Does that answer?
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. Yeah.
Right, any further questions of clarification? Right, if not, we'll seek a mover and a seconder, please, for number 1, that the Strategy and Policy Committee receives the Climate Plan Adaptation Implementation Report and Project Management Plan, and 2, that we endorse the Climate Adaptation Implementation Project for delivery over the next 12 months. Any debate or comment? Mea Tantos.
I'll just... Oh.
Oh, beg your pardon. Mover...
I'll move it.
Councillor, Mea Tantos. And seconded by Councillor Ross. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I'll just make a very short comment, which is that we do a lot of stuff in council. It's a huge organisation, it's a huge operation. We deal with a lot of different stuff. But really, this is some of the most critical work that we do, is actually this kind of planning. And so I just want to, it's really just emphasising the importance of the work that you're doing for our organisation, and that as councillors that we get in behind this work as well, because it's absolutely critical.
Any further debate, thoughts or comments? Right, well, I'll ask all those in favour. Say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies, for the report. And that actually concludes our meeting for today. And we'll just finish with ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa i tō koutou tainga mai me o tātou whakaro e tēnei rā. Thank you for your thoughts and your attendance. And karakia whakakapi, kia whakarirea i te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tura ki whakataka ai, kia tura ki whakataka ai, haumi e, hui e, tā kia. Thank you, everybody. And I think...
Thank you, Leslie, for chairing the meeting. Thank you, everyone.